Good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to apologize. We don't have interpreters again today. We've been assured that we'll get this rectified next week, but again, my apologies for that. We're going to start today with Commissioner Pichek to give us an update.
Thank you very much, Governor. I'm Mike Pichek. I serve as the Commissioner of Vermont's Department of Financial Regulation, and I've also been leading Vermont's COVID-19 modeling team. This is our 6th public briefing on the state's modeling efforts, and I will begin with an update on this week's trends, and then discuss new modeling focused on the reopening of our economy, and I will end by previewing some of the data metrics we plan to keep a close eye on throughout the summer. For those watching at home who would like to view our full presentation, you can visit the department's website. A link to all of our past presentations and today's as well can be found on our department's front page under the COVID-19 Resource Center. This week, we are repeating a familiar theme as our forecasts and data all continue to tell a favorable story for Vermont. Our actual experience continues to perform better than our forecasts. As we can see on our chart, our actual confirmed cases, represented by the thick blue line, continues to trend in a positive direction, well below our previous forecasts. A key contributor to this outcome is Vermonters. Our updated mobility data continues to tell the story of sacrifice as Vermonters are clearly adhering to the physical distancing orders in place. The chart on the left shows that Vermonters are continuing to limit their travel outside of their homes, and the chart on the right shows that we continue to favorably compare to the rest of northern New England. As expected, we did see an uptick in mobility this past weekend with the arrival of summer-like weather conditions, but as we've talked about previously, that can be done in a safe manner. Vermont's doubling rate remains steady. We do not expect our cases to double for over 3 months. We continue to be in a handful of states that are measuring their doubling rate in months instead of weeks. On the next slide, we see a comparison of the doubling rates across the Northeast. Many of our neighbors have seen improvement this week. New Hampshire, however, is on a trajectory to have their cases double every 2 weeks, rather than the 3 weeks we indicated last Friday. This indicates viral growth in New Hampshire and is a good reminder of how diligent and vigilant Vermonters need to continue to be, even as our experience is better than those of our neighbors. We continue to see good trends regarding the numbers of Vermonters requiring hospital care for COVID-19. With only single digits requiring hospital bed and ICU care, and no one currently requiring ventilator care. It has also been 18 days since Vermont took its initial reopening turn on May 20th. During this time, our viral growth rate and daily case count has remained steady, with our growth rate hovering around 1%. We also continue to see positive trends regarding the number of active cases of COVID-19. The further reductions we experienced this week means we have fewer active cases in Vermont today than we did in late March, and expect this trend to continue to improve. We have also started to model scenarios throughout the summer as Vermont contemplates steps to further reopen our economy and our society. Dr. Vespignani from Northeastern has provided us with Vermont-specific forecasts. This modeling outlines 4 scenarios. The top orange line represents a scenario where we have a return to near normal, and even with our positive trends and our positive experience, this scenario would put us on a trajectory that would likely overwhelm our hospitals by the middle of the summer. The second scenario, shown in pink, indicates the Vermont economy starting to reopen, but without the necessary testing, contact tracing, and other preventative measures in place. The third scenario, shown in green, similarly illustrates the Vermont economy beginning to reopen, but with the appropriate preventative measures in place. Under this scenario, we see that it is possible for us to strategically reopen our economy without seeing concerning trends in hospital demand throughout the summer. Initial modeling from Columbia University tells a similar story. We will, of course, in the days and weeks ahead, continue to refine these models and work with our modeling partners to ensure a safe transition to reopening Vermont. In collaboration with Dr. Levine and the Department of Health, we have also been identifying key metrics engaging the impact of the reopening on the trajectory of the coronavirus in our state. These initial metrics are syndromic surveillance, viral growth rate, the percentage of new positive tests, and hospital availability. The first 3 metrics provide us with advanced warning of troubling uptrends. The last metric, hospital and ICU beds, will help us prepare if such an event occurs. We will continue to discuss these metrics in fuller detail in the future, but I do want to provide a brief overview today. The first metric, syndromic surveillance, tells us how many Vermonters are visiting emergency care centers for COVID-19 or flu-like symptoms. The data is available in near real time, giving us visibility into any unexpected spikes and case increases. Our second metric monitors the viral growth and reproductive rate. We spent a lot of time over the past few weeks talking about our 3-day and 7-day growth rate averages, but we are also tracking a value called RT, which is related to R naught and measures the average number of people who become infected by an infectious person. An RT value of 1 means that each person who gets the virus is currently giving that virus to one other person. An RT value above 1 means the virus is growing, and an RT value below 1 means the virus is actively shrinking. Like New York State, we think a reproductive value of 1.1 would cause us concern. Currently in Vermont, our RT is estimated to be below 1%, ranging somewhere between 3.5 and 4.3. Again, a good sign for us indicating viral decline. Our third data point is the percentage of new positive tests that come back. We have discussed this metric before, but it gives us really important context as we start to ramp up testing in Vermont. Our fourth metric and final metric is hospital and critical care bed availability. We want to actively monitor and measure to ensure that we have the bed capacity in the event that there is a significant rise in cases. Because of the delay between transmission of the virus, receiving a confirmed test, and then needing hospital care, we need to factor in a margin of safety for our hospital resources. Like New York State, we would like to see our total hospital and ICU beds stay below 70% capacity for both COVID and non-COVID patients. This gives us the confidence that we can respond to any changes in our metrics before they would challenge our healthcare system. In conclusion, the results continue to show a positive progression in our fight against the coronavirus in Vermont. New cases remain in decline as we stand to increase our testing and contact tracing capacity. Our analysis and the work of our partners shows that Vermont can continue to strategically plan to reopen, and if done so appropriately and with care, we can do it without the fear of widespread health crisis. We must continue to monitor key metrics to ensure that this remains the case as the spring and summer proceeds. Once again, I would like to thank Vermonters for their extraordinary efforts in combating the virus. Together, you have made Vermont a standout, certainly in the Northeast and across the country. It is because of everyone's individual efforts and sacrifices we continue to experience better than expected outcomes. Thank you very much, and I'd like to turn it back over to the Governor.
Thank you, Commissioner Pichek. We'll continue to take time on Fridays to update everyone on what we're seeing, as well as how that helps us make decisions as we reopen parts of our economy. 2 weeks ago, we began taking some steps to restart Vermont, getting more people back to work a quarter turn at a time, with more training that includes strict health and safety requirements, and simple things like staggering breaks and start times to prevent mass gatherings. You've seen us take a very measured approach, keeping our eye on the data and working closely with our Department of Health to safely and slowly restart our economy. And we continue to put more and more Vermonters back to work. And I know that there are many who are worried they won't be able to return to a job because schools and child care providers are closed. It's one of the ripple effects that we have to be sensitive to and aware of. So today, we wanted to take a few minutes to provide updates on childcare and education. And it's interesting timing because today, May 8th, is National Childcare Provider Day. So I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of those in this field, and especially to those who open their programs to kids who are essential workers during this crisis. This has been absolutely critical for these families, their kids, as well as for all of us. So on behalf of all Vermonters, I thank you. And for the many other child care providers who unfortunately had to close their doors, we know how hard this has been as small business owners doing this important work, and for your staff as well. I want you all to know that your sacrifices are appreciated and your work to care for our kids is so important to all of us in our future. As Commissioner Pichek explained, because Vermonters have taken this virus so seriously, we're fortunate to see the data pointing in the right direction. And while we have to continue to watch it closely and be ready to slow down or hit pause if needed, we also know that childcare centers and parents need to plan ahead. That's why I'm very glad to make several announcements today regarding childcare in summer day camps. To start, all childcare programs will be able to reopen by June 1st. To be clear, we are not requiring them to be open, but if they want to and can meet strict health and safety requirements, they can restart in June. So that means beginning May 18th, they can start to transition, giving them some time to bring back staff, conduct training, and set up operations. Secretary Smith will share more on this in a few minutes. Next, we can expect to see summer day programs open this year. And Ted Brady, Deputy Secretary of ACCD, is joining us by video to provide more information on that, as well as what we're looking at for overnight camps as well. Our teams at the Health Department, ACCD, AHS will be providing guidance to help keep our kids and employees safe. But we know meeting all the new health and safety expectations will be a financial challenge. So we'll be creating Restart grants, which will provide about $6 million in funding for childcare and summer day programs opening in June. These grants will help cover the added costs of making these programs even safer and healthier. And now I realize how difficult it may be for many to reopen, the apprehension, knowing the virus is still with us. But I think it's important to make this transition for the good of our providers, for their families and kids, and as well as we prepare for what could be normal for a while. And we can and will do it in a way that keeps everyone safe. That's why child care workers will be included in our expanded testing and tracing program. I think we all know we're going to have to adapt. That's why the flexibility and creativity are so important. I also know we don't have all the answers, but if we work together towards a common goal and work through these challenges, I'm confident we can transition back to serving Vermont's children. Secretary French is also here to share his guidance, which he'll issue to school districts today regarding end-of-year events like graduations. Now, unfortunately, at this point, despite our positive trends, we still can't allow for the large crowds you typically see at these important celebrations. But the Secretary will share more on some alternative ways students and teachers can celebrate. Before I turn it over to him, in another coincidence, this week is also Teacher Appreciation Week. So I want to send my gratitude to Vermont teachers. We're thankful for all your work and the great things that you do here in Vermont. We've been so incredibly fortunate to have your creativity over the last few weeks to help keep kids engaged and on track. Please know we appreciate your contributions and all you've done. You've clearly gone the extra mile here. We've seen teachers dressing up in costumes, interviewing interesting Vermonters, driving to Wi-Fi hotspots to stay connected to students from your car, parading by your students' homes, and so much more. So I want to thank you so much for this work that you've done that's so critical for us during these times. And as I end my remarks, I want to wish everyone a happy Mother's Day weekend, especially to those of us that have been fortunate to have such great moms. My own mom in particular, who may or may not be watching, I'm really not sure. But I want to thank her for her inspiration, for being the type of person she is. She's guided me throughout my life to become the person I am today. So with that, I thank her, and I want to wish her a happy Mother's Day, and I love you, Mom. So I'll now ask Secretary French to provide an update on the end of the school year and what we might see in the fall as well.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. Today I am issuing guidance on end-of-year celebrations in schools and graduations. We set the deadline of May 8th for this decision to allow the most current public health data to be used, while at the same time giving local school officials enough time to plan for the end of the school year. The current public health data, in the context of school calendars, does not support the practical reopening of school for in-person instruction this spring, considering the logistical complexities involved, such as student transportation systems and the interdependent schedules between and among schools. Also, the current public health guidance limits the size of in-person gatherings to 10 people or less, with careful physical distancing and hygiene requirements. Implementing such a limitation in our schools would be problematic. While this limitation is expected to evolve as Vermont continues to respond to COVID-19, the timing of any such changes is not certain. For planning purposes, schools should expect that larger group gatherings will not be permitted prior to the end of the school year. Therefore, schools may only plan in-person and end-of-year school gatherings and graduations consistent with the state's limitation on size of such gatherings. And any other such events will need to occur virtually or by means other than in-person gatherings. Schools are encouraged to plan creatively with their communities for opportunities to celebrate milestones and graduations in ways that are safe and supportive of students and their achievements. Also, all end-of-year gatherings and graduations should be designed to ensure equal access and participation by all the affected students. Although school will remain closed for in-person instruction for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year, we expect there will come a time when school facilities could be utilized during the summer for educational or community activities. These activities might include student support services such as tutoring and social emotional learning opportunities, professional development and training for staff, or community programs such as summer camps. The guidance I'll be issuing today will also direct schools to follow their established calendars for the remaining part of the school year. I would like to express my appreciation for teachers and administrators who have stepped up to support the rapid design and implementation of our continuity of learning programs. Remote learning cannot be a replacement for in-person instruction, but your efforts demonstrate your deep commitment to the success of our students. I would especially like to thank parents for their patience during this challenging time. I know the closing of school has put a lot of pressure on families. I appreciate your cooperation and the way you have worked together to support each other during this difficult time. As much as this has been a significant public health emergency and it has been significantly disruptive to our lives, it has also brought us closer together in support of our children. Looking towards the fall, we are now working to establish the issues we have to consider in order to have a good start to the new school year, with the aim and expectation of having in-person instruction with schools open if the data on the virus continues to support it. We will also continue to work on improving our ability to deliver remote instruction as a contingency. Working together, I am confident we can have a successful launch of the new school year. Thank you. I will now turn it over to Deputy Secretary Brady from ACCD. He's on phone, I believe.
Actually, let's go to Mike Smith first. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Secretary Smith.
I'm going to be talking about the opening of childcare centers, but before I do that, I want to wish everyone a early Mother's Day. Although we celebrate Mother's Day, it will really look a lot different this year. It's just as important as ever. We give thanks to moms across Vermont. So if you haven't gotten your Mother's Day present, I urge you to do so as quick as possible. Governor Scott's administration has partnered with WCAX and Moth Storytellers to produce 3 stories about moms and loved ones. WCAX will broadcast those Sunday at 7:30 a.m. Please tune in and listen to these inspirational stories. Additionally, knowing many mothers and grandmothers may still be quarantined in nursing homes or assisted living facilities, and many mothers will be providing care to them as well, We worked with Ben and Jerry's to deliver 4,000 servings of ice cream to these 53 facilities by Sunday. Just wanted to let you know, we hope this brings a bright spot to those moms that have been in those long-term care facilities for quite a while now. And hopefully we can put a little bright spot in their day on Sunday. So back to child care centers. We want providers to begin planning now so that we can have a smooth reopening as possible, knowing that there will be a need to transition along the way and adjust how child care operators account for hygiene and healthcare guidelines. As the governor mentioned, regulated child care programs can plan to open up on June 1st and transition starting May 18th to bring back staff and to set up their operations while our stabilization funding and supplemental payment continue in that program. That's a program we established at the start of this pandemic to keep our child care centers up and running. We will cease those payments at the end of the month, and as the governor had mentioned, we will have restart grants in place to help with transition costs for those programs that reopen. Though we have to keep an eye on the data and can't presume we are out of the woods with this virus yet, we know you can't successfully operate with only 10 individuals in a room in the long term. So we don't expect child care operators to do that. Some programs may not operate at their usual full capacity and may not have as many opportunities this summer as they usually do, since some programs have made the hard decision not to operate at all. But we will work with programs that do open to help you through the transition. We know many have made plans to open and serve our kids and families, and we're grateful for everything you are doing. And hopefully, if trends continue, we'll be able to expand that guidance as we move forward. For all child care and youth programs, we'll be issuing updated guidance next week from the Department of Health for operating, building off the guidance they have in place now for child care programs that they've been using during this crisis. And I just want to sort of take a moment and talk about what we have been doing in child care during this crisis. Since the beginning of the virus response, we have had an expert work group in place to keep our health guidance aligned with the best available medical evidence. Dr. Brina Holmes, a pediatrician who is our maternal and child health director at VDH, has led this work. This work group will continue to monitor changes going forward to inform Vermont guidance as the COVID-19 situation continues to evolve. Medical professionals, Vermont After School, Building Bright Futures, and Let's Grow Kids, among others, in this effort to support the programs. We have shared information through frequent webinars, through our child care licensing program, Help Me Grow and Building Bright Futures, and have a hotline for child care providers to speak with public health nurses at VDH about questions and concerns. All of that will continue as we reopen programs. We will work with programs to acquire cleaning and other hygiene supplies if programs have difficulties receiving them, and for the state to provide technical assistance to programs to help ease the transition back to operating since we will be still living with the virus for possibly months ahead. Our team is holding webinars and training sessions starting today and over the next few weeks for help. We have our robust, as we've mentioned over the last couple of weeks, we have a robust contact tracing approach for any identified case of COVID-19 in Vermont. This approach will be used in the event of a positive case of COVID-19 in any youth-serving program. That includes childcare, summer programs, Vermont after-school programs. VDH's Tracing and Testing Task Force is also working now to establish a volunteer testing program for childcare providers who have been open and caring for essential persons during this crisis. Finally, on the Restart grants, I've asked my team at AHS to work with ACCD to determine how quickly we can stand up a program to provide funding to childcare providers who open in June and to summer day programs. I have said that I want this done as quick as possible. We will work quickly in state government and with community partners to do just that, so that this is in place to support a June opening. We will put out further information and further guidance on all of this next week. I'd like to introduce a Deputy Secretary of ACCD, Ted Brady now.
Thanks, Secretary Smith. Good morning. So the Agency of Commerce and the Restart Action Team have been working with a group of Vermont day camps and overnight camps to consider how and when they may be able to operate this summer. For thousands of Vermonters, summer camp and summer day camp, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. And the hundreds of camps across Vermont provide needed child care, educational and enrichment programs, and summer meal programs. As the governor mentioned, summer camps simply need to be open if we expect the economy to reopen. Summer day camps, they can meet the child care guidance that Secretary Smith mentioned, may, at their discretion, be able to open this summer. I just want to reiterate that. It's a decision that the summer camps can make themselves. ACCD will continue to work with AHS, the Department of Education, and day camp providers to ensure the health and safety of campers and the financial viability of these programs. And we understand that the Restart grants are going to be critical to mitigating the additional health measures that these programs are going to have to take, as well as the financial uncertainty that we know they're entering. However, I need to be very clear. Summer camp is going to look different this year. Some camps have already decided that the way we need to change them won't work for them, and they've decided to cancel. And that's a decision that each camp can make. However, others have found ways to adapt, and will have to find ways to adapt to that AHS guidance and change their programs dramatically. That said, our hope is that as summer progresses, camps can begin to offer programming that Vermonters are familiar with seeing all summer long at their town parks and their beaches and pools. But unfortunately, that's going to have to determine later this spring and summer. But we're committed to working with them to try to bring them there. Vermont's also really fortunate to have dozens of first-class overnight camps that employ Vermonters. They invite young people to learn about Vermont and fall in love with Vermont, many of whom become future Vermont residents. And they help define the summer culture of dozens of Vermont communities. While these reopenings undoubtedly are going to be more complicated, ACCD is working with the Vermont Camping Association and a sampling of overnight camps to understand what they could do to comply with the CDC and Department of Health guidance that will be forthcoming, and how they could change the way they do business to keep their campers safe, to keep their staff safe, and to keep the communities that host them safe. We're looking at guidance provided by the American Camp Association as well as the YMCA that lays out some of these best practices. Now, obviously, the largest difference between summer day camps and overnight camps is that overnight camps also serve out-of-state residents. And that fact's going to require additional mitigation. And we're working with this restart group to try to find a way that we could mitigate those issues. But we believe that overnight summer camps will be able to operate this summer, and we'll be issuing more guidance in the coming weeks as we recognize they need to start putting plans into place to hire staff, order the food, get their cleaning supplies ready, and to give their customers some surety. Again, I want to reiterate, while we're pleased today that day camps and overnight camps have a path forward for this summer, they're going to look different under the AHS guidance. And we also know that some are not going to be able to accommodate that guidance. But we're confident that the town's nonprofits and for-profit groups can work together and find a way to restart. So the Restart Action Team is committed to working with all types of camps to lay out a phased restart plan that might return additional camps to operation throughout the summer and give camps that are operating more tools and perhaps a little more fun later in the summer. Thank you so much.
We'll now open up to questions.
All right, we have about 24 folks in the queue today, so just bear that in mind. We'll start in the room with Calvin.
Thank you. So this might be a question for Ed Brady or maybe Secretary French, but do we have any idea as to sort of how many summer camps won't be able to operate, or summer camps but also school programs that happen over the summer won't be able to operate because of social distancing guidelines, or they might not have the facilities to accommodate?
It might be difficult to assess that at this point, but I'll refer to Deputy Secretary Brady. Did you hear the question, Secretary?
I did, Governor. Thanks. We don't have a firm number as to how many can and can't. I think it's going to depend on what the camps do, right? What are the activities that they depend on? What's the physical space they use? How many campers do they need to be financially viable? There's so many different criteria that each camp needs to evaluate. And we really respect the fact that one size isn't going to fit all this summer. But we hope the guidance that is issued gives a clear structure that says this is how you can operate and gives them a path forward.
And then just a quick follow-up, I think probably, Governor, for you. Any timeline as to when we can expect hair salons, nail salons, sort of in-person services like that to resume?
Yeah, we'll be announcing a few more this coming week. It won't be today, but certainly in the next week or so. Hopefully, if we continue down this path and we see the trends continuing to improve or at least staying steady, that we'll be able to announce further openings, and I would expect those will be in the queue.
Stuart?
Question for Secretary French. If you could, Mr. Secretary, just sort of speak directly to kids who would graduate about their disappointment. And as well, are we going to open school again in the fall?
Yeah, in terms of graduation, it is a disappointment to the students, certainly. I mean, I don't think anyone could have imagined a spring semester like this for your senior year. It's also a disappointment for communities, and so many of our graduations are community-wide celebrations. So, certainly my heart goes out to those students. I also think, it sends that message. We often reflect at graduation about, it's called commencement, what's in front of us. And I think the lessons we've learned as a state and a community are ones that hopefully will stay with students. I think we've learned that we're all in this together. And as much as we focus on pursuing our individual dreams and so forth, we have to remember it's important to give back and work together as part of a community. But in terms of the fall, as I mentioned in our guidance, in my statement about the guidance, it's our hope and expectation that we will be able to return to in-person instruction in the fall. But that decision obviously would be informed by the public health information as we get closer. But we're going to start planning along those lines now, and also maintaining and improving our ability to do remote learning, which we see as a necessary contingency in case at some point we need to close some schools.
phones now. We have Aaron from BT Digger.
Hi. We know now that the national unemployment rate has reached, a peak not seen since the Great Depression. We haven't gotten that data yet for Vermont, but I have a couple of, lingering things about the unemployment claims. Mostly that we still don't know what sectors have been hardest hit. According to the unemployment claims data, which is something that was released for last year and prior to the crisis, but it's not something that we've had since the crisis started. Now that the initial influx of claims has kind of slowed down, are we going to start seeing that data come up again?
I would refer to Commissioner Harrington on that, but I would expect from, just from the layman's position, that it would be in the service sector. Some of the bars, restaurants, and so forth, tourism-related industries are going to be hardest hit, I would imagine. But Commissioner Harrington.
Thank you, Governor. Some of our tracking of those metrics were set aside as we were processing and expediting claims over the past few weeks, but we are working to compile sector data and hope to be able to release that in the coming weeks.
Okay. And with the unemployment claims, do we know how many people are still in the queue?
Can you just give me a little bit more detail as to what you mean by the queue?
People who are still waiting to get their claims, seen or processed, essentially.
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned on Wednesday, we've got this final group of people we're working through. It's roughly about 10 to 12% of the entire claim population. So it represents about 10,000 people. These are people who are traditionally not eligible for general UI due to wage and earnings. And we are working through that population. We will reach a point, though, where if we're unable to resolve those in the next few days, where we will move those over to the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program to ensure that those people start receiving benefits. From there, the only population that is truly left out there is a few thousand people who fall into the harder to place category, require truly more due diligence, follow-up, investigation, and review in order to see if there's a way to make them eligible under a variety of different circumstances.
Okay, thank you. Governor, do you have any final thoughts on the, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to, just to elaborate a little bit further, when the Commissioner said in the next few days that they would be put into the process one way or another, that has been something that I've asked him to do over the weekend. So if by Saturday night or first thing Monday morning, if they aren't dealt with, then they will go into this other process, the PUA process, and their claims will be added on Monday afternoon. So that's what you can expect. It won't be the full 10,000, but it'll be the vast majority of those 10,000.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any final thoughts on the national unemployment rate and what it means that we're in, an unprecedented recession?
Yeah, obviously this is devastating to our economy and to a lot of the businesses themselves, the business owners. My heart goes out to them. I'm a small business owner myself for most of my life, so I certainly can understand their frustration at this point in time, seeing what's been their livelihood, what they built their hopes and dreams on, evaporating before their eyes, and it's not their fault. So I have a great deal of sympathy and empathy for what they're going through. In terms of the employees, I think some of what we're seeing, the high unemployment rate and some of these numbers reflect some of the great work that Congress has done in trying to add to the program, as well as those who are self-employed and independent contractors, which has never been done before. So that's going to lead to some higher numbers, but in the end, the economy will be healthier because we've been able to pay people who are unemployed so that they can get by and pay their bills and so forth. So I think in the end, when all this is over and we look back, I think that that will be seen as a great support system for the economy, and we'll be able to rebound all that much quicker because of that. In terms of the Great Depression, we just didn't have those mechanisms in place. So it's hard to associate the two and compare the two because it's just a different era. But I believe the steps that have been taken by the administration, by Congress, will be helpful to help us rebound.
Thank you.
Kat, WCAX.
Good morning. I wanted to thank you for that updated modeling with some more details on the data you're going to be watching as we reopen the economy. I do have two questions stemming from the Restart Vermont model that you showed with those 4 different reopening scenarios. First one centers around travel out of state. Many Vermonters, of course, are looking to make their summer plans. Based on those models you showed us earlier, how does lifting a 2-week quarantine for people who leave and come back factor into that?
So Kat, this is Mike Pichak. So the modeling that we've done to date really focuses on Vermont and Vermont's experience. It does not factor in people coming into Vermont for the summer or people leaving and coming back into Vermont. So that's certainly something that we have to continue to keep a close eye on and be diligent about. The governor reiterated that this week. The 14-day quarantine remains in place, and the communication around that continues to be elevated because that is something we have to keep an eye on.
Cool. The second question based on the model, scenario 3 says if half of the non-essential businesses reopen and there's those important hygiene and safety tips that stay in place, that's what our curve will look like. Does that model then assume that we will move through the summer without half of our businesses open? And if so, who chooses which half does not reopen?
Yeah, it's a good question, Kat. So for clarity, when we say 50%, we're talking about people physically in their workplaces. So a great percentage of our workforce can work remote and do their work like we do at our department and most of state government is doing. So when we talk about 50%, it's not 50% open, but 50% basically resuming their normal work environment.
Got it. Thank you.
If I could add as well, Kat, when we're talking about those who are leaving the state and then coming back in that 14-day quarantine period, obviously we're not trying to punish people for coming back to the state of Vermont or for leaving. What we're trying to do is grow our testing, increase our testing capacity, which we'll see tomorrow. I think Dr. Levine, if necessary, in another question, might be able to elaborate on that. But we're going to step that up. And hopefully in the future, if we can continue to increase the testing and tracing, that we'll be able to test people when they come back in, for instance, who have left for legitimate reasons and need to come back, so that we can cut down that period of time. But at this point, we're not able to roll that out, but that's the goal, is to envision a future where we're having to test and trace until there's a vaccine that takes its place.
Got it. So then people, if down the line that quarantine becomes lifted, they should expect to be tested when they come back in.
Well, that's, again, that's what I envision. It's not something we're ready to put into place at this point, but we're trying to test those sectors within in our boundaries of the state at this point. But again, as testing changes, it gets faster, and there's probably going to be different diagnostic tools utilized in the future. I just don't know what they are. But as it becomes easier, that's what we'd like to do, is to make sure that we're realizing what's happening outside of our state. Because as I've said many times, we have to look at this. We can't look at this myopically just here in Vermont, because it depends on our neighbors. It depends on the region. And when we're seeing the numbers grow in New Hampshire, for instance, that has an effect on us. When we're seeing these huge outbreaks in Massachusetts, that affects us and the people coming into the state, and certainly from New York. So those are all factors we have to take into consideration, and what we're trying to do is protect Vermonters.
Thank you.
All right, and I should have mentioned this to start, but for those of you on the phone, Commissioner Levine is in the room. He just didn't have remarks today, so if you have questions for him. Now, next in the queue will be Sean from the Chester Telegraph.
Thank you. School boards in our area are looking at ways to reduce spending for the upcoming year with an eye toward carrying a surplus into fiscal year 22. That would help taxpayers. Does the administration favor making that possible? And would you expect the education fund to be looking to recapture savings?
And when you say fiscal year 22, do you mean the next fiscal year 21?
No, in other words, what they're trying to do is save money in the coming year, being tighter in fiscal year 21 to carry forward into 22.
Well, just from my position, anytime you can save money and be more efficient, I'm in favor, but I'll let Secretary French answer that.
Yeah, I certainly don't disagree with that. I think, Sean, it's complex right now. As you know, we're beginning to close a fiscal year, and the boards will start a new fiscal year on July 1st. And we have the element of the CARES Act revenues that are about to come out to school districts. At the same time, we have a significant financial problem in the ed fund, significant deficit there as well. So I think, school board members will need to be very conservative and definitely seek to get efficiencies where they can to maintain their flexibility to navigate not only this transition between these two fiscal years, but I think what will no doubt be a very challenging year in front of us, even though their budgets are set and so forth for the most part. I expect we're going to be in, like all sectors of our economy, and for a very challenging financial future.
Do you see the education fund looking to recapture any savings that they are able to realize in FY21?
When you say the education fund, I think if you're speaking about policy issues of how that deficit will be resolved, I'm not sure. I think at this point, what I've observed in the legislative process, that all options are on the table. This is sort of an unprecedented situation, so it's not clear to me yet what shape those solutions will take.
Thank you.
Patricia Bennington Banner. Patricia Bennington Banner.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
I'm wondering regarding the child care provider openings and the summer day camp openings, will you require students, or kids I should say, and child care providers or summer day camp employees to be tested for COVID-19 before reopening? Has that been considered, and why or why not?
I think we'll start with Secretary Smith.
We are going to offer testing to those that are currently open. There's like 350 individuals that will be tested, and we'll offer testing to other people as this program comes online. Testing will be available throughout the industry, and we will continue to have testing available on a periodic basis for anybody that wants to choose to use it. We think it's important, an important part, as well as the tracing aspects of it as well. Dr. Levine, do you have anything more to say about that, or did I just? Okay, for the first time, Dr. Levine said I was good.
So are you saying, Secretary Smith, that you mentioned you guys are going to offer testing to those child care providers that are currently open, and you also said they'll offer testing to other people as these programs come online. And so, do you plan to offer testing to all child care providers and summer day camp providers that desire it, so they don't have to have symptoms, or some other?
Yeah, we will offer testing to anybody that desires it in these specific programs.
The summer day camps and the child care providers.
Yes.
And do you know when that will start?
Well, it's going to start before June 1st because we have the pop-up tents that are doing it now. I don't have the schedule. Maybe Dr. Levine has the schedule. What we're doing now, we're working with working with those that have been open and are caring for essential workers during the crisis. They will be the priority right now, and then we'll move into others as well on a volunteer basis, and we'll hope that they do it. I don't have the schedule when the pop-ups will be available for them, but maybe you do, Dr.
But that testing would all be done before these places would reopen.
Right. I mean, we have child care centers that are open right now for essential workers. They will have the priority for the testing right now.
Funny, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Levine, you want to?
Yeah, hi. We will have 4 of the pop-up testing sites over the next week. The first one is in the Public Health Laboratory parking lot in Colchester tomorrow. And then over the course of the next week, they go to Bennington, Brattleboro, and Hartford, pretty much on an every other day basis. There's so much lead time before the child cares and day camps need to open that there'll be ample opportunity for workers in those sectors to be able to get tested. We certainly want to allow them to have that opportunity. The priority populations for these next pop-ups are going to be first responders, which is really very broadly defined in terms of EMS workers, but also fire, police, etc. The healthcare workforce, which you can imagine is quite broadly defined and large as well. And then, as Secretary Smith mentioned, those in the child care sector that are doing essential work. Thank you.
All right, Courtney, 7 days.
Yes, I'm not sure who would take this question, but I'm just curious if there's any more details that you all can provide about what standards the summer camps, whether they're day programs or overnight camps, will have to meet in order to open. I guess specifically, do you know at this point, will out-of-state campers be permitted to come? Will those kids have to quarantine 14 days as they get here? Is the 10-person rule still in effect? Those sort of questions.
Yeah, I think we'll let Deputy Secretary Brady answer that. I think he had mentioned before some of those details are yet to be worked out, and we're trying to do them in the next week or so in terms of the overnight campers and so forth, and from out of state as well. So, Deputy Secretary Brady.
Yeah, sure. To be clear, the day camps will be expected to follow, in this first phase, will be expected to follow the same guidance as child care providers. And then as we go to the next phase of this, you talk to the providers and talk to the camp leaders about what they need in order to operate. And then we'll work with health to vet those ideas. As far as out-of-staters coming in, that's the big question right now. We think there's a way to do this because of the way camps, summer camps generally are a quarantine group of people. However, we need to work that out. We need to identify how you could do that, how you can quarantine people, if health feels comfortable with the procedures that the camps propose. So by no means is it finalized, but we think there is a path forward. We're going to work with the health department. We're going to work with the guidance that the American Camp Association and YMCA have issued to try to find a way forward.
And could you just expand a bit on what that, for the day camps, you said they'll be expected to follow the same guidance as child care providers. Could you just give some details of what that means?
I have Secretary Smith.
I think that would be best to Secretary Smith.
As I had mentioned in my remarks, for child care and youth programs, which include day camps, we're issuing updated guidance next week from the Vermont Department of Health for operating, and that will be built off the guidance that we have in place now for the child care programs during the crisis. And as I said, we've been really monitoring this as we have opened child care. And by the way, I want to sort of reiterate, I haven't had the chance to do this, but I want to reiterate what Governor Scott had said. It's been an amazing program that's been put in place during this crisis for essential workers, probably and I think the governor, probably one of the most innovative and programs in the country, and is being hailed as such in other quarters out there. But since the beginning of the crisis, we've really married the child care centers with the Department of Health through Dr. Brina Holmes, a pediatrician, to make sure that we are up to speed on the latest guidance, the CDC guidance, and we'll continue to do that as we move forward. Again, the guidance will be issued next week, so I don't have any specifics. Many of the child care centers out there will be wondering, does that mean, can we go from 10 to 20 to other areas in terms of size? We'll work through that as the data dictates and as we move forward. So I can't give you any specifics right now other than say, stay tuned. The new guidance will be out on hygiene and cleanliness of those programs.
Thank you.
Brittany, Local 22.
Hi. So my question is in regards to DMVs and getting your license. I was just curious as to, when teenagers would be allowed to take their driving test and possibly get their license. I know a lot of them were relying on that for summer jobs. So I'm just curious if there's any procedures in place or something that's going to be put in place to help them.
Yeah, Brittany, I know that's been a topic of discussion, and I can't, for the life of me, remember what has been done, but I know that we're contemplating this. I know that the Department of Motor Vehicle has been working on some details, but I just don't, at this point in time, have the correct information. So if we could get back to you, I'd appreciate it, and I know that we've done something, I just don't know what it is.
Okay, yep, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll get that info to you, Brittany. Next up is Lisa at the AP. Lisa, AP. All right, move to Joe at the Barton Chronicle.
Hello, I've been thinking about the payroll protection plan and how it seems to be based on 8 weeks of pay for people. And I'm curious, do you expect when that people burn through that money that they will start laying off people again and you're going to see a secondary wave of unemployment claims?
Yeah, Joe, we've been somewhat concerned about this for a while, and I know that some of the owners have been concerned as well, and some aren't signing up or taking advantage of this because they know if you go through the 8 weeks, then and you're not able to put people back to work, that it's not treated as a grant at that point. Then you have to pay it. It's treated as a loan. So this is a great concern to us. We're hopeful. The congressional delegation, we've been working with them. They understand the issue. We're hoping that they're able to provide different guidance, maybe through legislation or maybe through the Treasury or whoever it is, the SBA, to provide for a longer period of time before that's treated as a loan instead of a grant, because this is tremendously important to us. It helps the unemployment funds, as well as it helps the individual businesses and those employees. So we think it's a worthwhile program, but when it was first contemplated and first enacted, I don't think that people had a sense for how long this was going to take. So 8 weeks, I don't believe, is the right number. I think it has to be longer, and we're hoping that Congress will take action on this.
I know that the state has gotten some money that's available for COVID-specific expenses. Is there any thought being given to finding ways to keep some of the businesses, I'm thinking of hospitality businesses in particular, afloat. I mean, our economy consists of a lot of different fields that are very closely linked, and if one of them goes down, it is going to hurt everything else. So is there any thought be given to using some of the money the federal government has allotted to the states and helping businesses with that?
Yeah, I can assure you, Joe, we are trying to be as creative as possible and finding all kinds of opportunities to help our businesses here in the state. I think you'll see in the next week or so, we are working on a package and with prioritization of some aspects of this plan, but it's a significant package that we'll be talking about the next week or so. But we are trying to be creative. We're trying to help our businesses. We want them to survive. Obviously, it's the lifeblood of the revenue that comes into the state as well. So we have a vested interest, and we want to protect Vermonters and Vermont businesses as well. So we're working on a number of different areas. But again, going back to the PPP, hopefully Congress will take action on this, because that's the easiest path for that, at least to take place in a short period of time.
Thank you very much, Governor.
Tim, Vermont Business Magazine.
This is for perhaps Jim Porter and his southern accent. How is the $300 million draft emergency broadband access plan going to play out? When might that play out? Where's that money going to come from? It's unclear, the technical parts of that.
Yeah, Jim is on the line, I believe, but Tim, I would just say that I believe much of that money is being contemplated for the future. If the Congress takes action, which I believe they will. I mean, I'm looking at this like an REA type of moment where we want to bring broadband. It's been proven it's more significant in these times than ever. So we're hoping they'll take action on this, but this is having something in place so that we can take advantage of that when and if it does. But I'll let Jim answer that.
Thank you, Governor. You frankly answered that question better than I could have. I think we're still very hopeful, but still waiting to see what is going to come out of Washington.
Yeah, we just want to be very prepared, Tim, because as we've seen with some of the other initiatives, whether it's the SBA loans, the PPP, and so forth, it's like on a first-come, first-served basis. So the more prepared we are to take advantage of it, I think the better off we'll be. So that's why the Public Service Department, Jim and Commissioner Tierney have been working so diligently on trying to make this happen and get a plan together so that as soon as they come out with something that we can be first in line for this, because it's so necessary and so important to our state.
Is the timing still way up in the air, or is there something you're expecting in a certain time period? Can you give us any idea about that?
Yeah, the timing is up in the air. I know that there's been some bills being drafted on the congressional side. I know that I believe Representative Welch, as well as our senators, have been working on this as well. So we've all been talking about it. I believe that something will happen, but it's all up to Congress, really. So can't really pinpoint the timing until we know the money's coming. But we, again, want to do our due diligence, make sure that we're prepared so that we can take advantage of it just as soon as it happens so that we can put it into action.
All right, great, thank you.
Lola, BT Digger. Lola?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
We can.
Hello? Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I was hoping to ask Secretary French about graduation ceremonies. So is the guidance from the state that any in-person ceremony should be kind of pegged to the governor's orders on the size of gatherings that are allowable? And if so, how can school districts plan ahead for that? I was just texting with a superintendent who said planning for these events happens now, not the week of. So can you kind of maybe lend a little more clarity about what the expectations are for folks on the ground?
Sure, Lola. Hi. Yeah, it brings a point. There's a balance here between using the latest public health information, but also acknowledging that school districts need some time to plan for the event. So my guidance is pegged on the best information we have today and the guidance from the health department, which is no groups larger than 10. So that's the guidance districts will use to prepare for these events 4 weeks into the future.
Okay, and I'd like to just ask a quick follow-up question about childcares, actually. If childcares are expected to, likely open under capacity in order to meet health guidelines, what is the thinking from state officials on how we deal with likely the mismatch in demand as Vermonters go back to work and capacity in these childcare centers?
Lola, you should get that phone. Let me just say it will be up to the child care center of whether they wish to open or not on June 1st. We hope they open, obviously, and we'll make every effort to help them as they open. But one of the things that we'll continue to look at is the guidance from the health department and the data that we see coming every week in terms of what we're seeing happening on the ground. And the moment we can increase those numbers, we will increase those numbers. So I would plan to open on June 1st and see if the number remains at 10 or if it's going to be greater than 10 as we move forward. It's certainly not going to be a large number. I don't think we're going to be returning to those days, but there may be some flexibility towards June 1st. We'll just have to see, and I can't go beyond that right now, other than to say that we'll look at the flexibility as the numbers and as the guidance and as CDC sort of as we bring all the information together.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm wondering specifically from the perspective of families, right, who may not be able to access child care even as they open because they have to open under capacity. I guess from that perspective, is there a thinking about, what to do on the unemployment side if families can't go back to work?
Yeah, that's probably a question for Commissioner Harrington, but I would say that let's wait to June 1st to make those decisions to see how much capacity is in the system as we move forward. There may be capacity in the system. There may be other needs that we have to look at. But this is a work in progress, like many of us have said in the past. We're in unprecedented times. We're going to have to work through this to make sure that we ramp up. But what the governor wanted us to do is give people certainty that we're going to start opening up child care centers here in the state, and that's what we're going to do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harrington, do you want to weigh in on the UI options for folks with childcare challenges?
Sure, happy to. Again, each case is unique, and as Secretary Smith said, these are unprecedented times, and things often change pretty rapidly. But currently, if someone remains out of work due to a shortage of child care options, then they can continue to remain eligible for unemployment insurance benefits. There are other caveats to that, but for the most part, the general consensus is removing yourself from employment to care for a child because child care is not an available option is an exemption and would make that person eligible.
All right, Mike Donahue, the Islander.
Thank you. This is for Commissioner Pichak. Thank you very much for the latest modeling projections. I believe this is a sixth round of projections, and they obviously have a huge impact on Vermont reopening, both recently and in the coming weeks with graduation, summer camps, barber shops, and other businesses and events. I'm just trying to understand these a little better. So when you do your statewide statistical projections for all Vermonters, are you using only the limited numbers the health department is willing to share with Vermont residents? Or does your office and consultants get full access to a second set of numbers and stats? Like, do you get the number of out-of-staters that are in Vermont, tourists, workers, family visitors, that test positive within Vermont but are not listed in Vermont numbers? And do you receive also the stats of, like, the retirees and Vermont snowbirds that tested positive out of state and may be coming back home positive?
So thanks, Mike, for the question. We rely on publicly available data, or data that we make publicly available, I should say, similar to many other folks in Vermont watching the data themselves. We also rely on experience from other countries, other states, other regions at this point that are able to sort of take our data into account and model it against their experiences to build confidence in the outcomes of our forecasts and projections. We also look additionally at estimates ourselves of how many people might be coming into Vermont over the summer. So that's all information that we've talked about publicly, and happy to talk about it at greater length as well. But like I said, all the information is provided. We gather all the information and use all the information that's otherwise generally available to the public through us or through the health department.
So in other words, you do not know how many out-of-staters that are here visiting or working or whatever. Since the health department has not shared that publicly, you don't get those numbers, that there could be 250 out-of-staters that are here in Vermont that have tested positive, that those numbers, as the health department has said, are sent back to those states. You have no information on.
So there is information that we receive that's, subject to privacy considerations that, would be personally identifiable of an individual. So there is access to that information, but that's information that is not able to be made available publicly. But of course, that information is provided to the health department and to others that need to look at that to make decisions and assumptions.
Yeah, I'm not asking for personally identifiable people. I'm asking for the numbers of people, not names, ages, addresses, or anything other than what state they might be from, maybe, or something like that. I'm not asking for names. Do you get those for the out-of-staters? Because the health department doesn't share that with Vermonters. You get them.
Commissioner Levine, maybe you could elaborate on what the total number of cases that's reported includes?
Right. So, on a daily basis, we know the number of new cases that have just tested positive. And at times, a component of those cases does involve somebody whose place of residence is out of state, but they were tested in Vermont. So we are aware of that, and that goes into our daily statistics. So it's not actually being hidden from anyone. The bigger question, though, that is really challenging, as I think you'll understand yourself, Mike, is how do we actually know how many people are in Vermont at any one point in time from another locale, from another state, who may not have shared with us the information that they are indeed test positive, and it didn't get tested within Vermont, got tested out of state. Because we're not exactly setting up border entry points where you have to show a special piece of information or whatever to get into the state. So there's some information we're not hiding from anyone. It's hidden from us, and we have no idea. Commissioner Pichak does have...
I understand that.
He does have access to all of the data about number of positive cases on a daily basis.
So, but again, Vermonters have not been told how many out-of-staters that you told us a week or so ago that when you get the out-of-staters, you ship their names and information, I guess, back to New York, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. That you do have some numbers somewhere, but you have yet to ever share those numbers
We can,
with Vermonters.
yeah, and we can definitely share those numbers with you. I don't have them at the
Well, we
top.
asked last time, and we were supposed to get them, and we have.
Yeah, we can share those numbers with you, and I don't have them at my fingertips, but we definitely do what you said. We have an obligation to share them with the state of residence as well.
But Dr. Levine,
Okay,
those numbers
great.
are included
Thank
in the
you.
total daily cases, whether or not they are
Right,
residents. So
right.
when you
The numbers are included in the daily cases. You're looking more for the breakdown, though, so you know on an aggregate basis what percentage were from out of state.
Exactly. I mean,
Yes.
it's just, you know, I mean, there could be 200 people that have tested positive that you set those off out of state, and there could be 200 people from wintering in Florida that are now presumably, conversely, being added to the Vermont numbers because they have a Vermont residence.
All right, so we will get that data to you.
But the total, just to be
Okay.
clear, the total number of cases reported is the total number of cases
Right.
we get.
Right, the total
I
number is
mean,
the total
we'd
number.
like, sort of like a breakdown of, conceivably, you'd have it by state. So if you have 200 cases and 75 of them are from New York and 50 are from New Hampshire, whatever, I mean, that's not giving anything away.
Understood. Thanks for the question.
All right, we're going to
Great,
move
thank
to
you very much.
Peter Hirschfeld at BPR.
Thank you. I have two real quick ones. The first one is actually more of a clarification. Secretary Smith, are you saying that the total number of staff and children that will be allowed in a single child care facility will be limited by whatever the maximum allowable people gathering at any one time in one space is?
Right now, the maximum is 10 in a childcare facility in terms of students. We will take our guidance from, and that is guidance that we've received from the health department. The health department is part of my agency, but it is guidance from the health department. We are continuing looking at that guidance in order to see if there's opportunities to increase that number, because we realize that in some cases, that's not going to be viable for some of the operations. But currently, that is 10, Peter.
And Governor, right now the legislature is considering a bill that would offer financial relief to migrant farm workers who are not eligible for standard unemployment or for the PUA program. Without commenting on the legislation specifically, because I'm sure you haven't read it yet, do you support that idea in concept?
Yeah, I haven't even heard of that at this point in time, so I'd have to research that a bit and see what that would look like and what the population is and where they're getting the money.
Thank you.
All right, Amy, the Caledonia Record. Amy Nixon, Caledonia Record. Okay, we're going to move to Avery, WCAX.
Governor Scott, we know of at least one business that is still operating and has been talked to by police about still operating against your executive order. What do you have to say to these type of businesses, and also to the businesses who stopped operating and may see this as unfair to them, that they can't get income and pay their employees, things like that?
Yeah, again, I have a great amount of sympathy and empathy for those who can't work at this point in time. And again, as I said before, watching their hopes and dreams, their businesses they've worked so hard to try and build up and get to where they are today, being taken away right before their eyes through no fault of their own. So again, I understand the frustration. I think I know the business you're speaking of because I heard through the Attorney General about this. But again, I sympathize, but many others have done the right thing. And I believe through their actions, we're in the position we are today to start opening business back up. So I would simply ask that they adhere to the guidance. We'll get through this one way or another. We'll assist this owner of his business as best we can. Hopefully there's some programs that will be able to help him as we move out of this. We're going to be releasing a package in the near future on ideas that we have, both short-term and longer-term goals to help these businesses. So again, while I sympathize with him, it isn't fair to all the other businesses who did the right thing and put us in a position where we are today. We're one of the leaders in the nation in terms of compliance, and we'll be able to be a stronger economy as a result if we do this right.
And a quick follow-up, have there been any citations or fines issued?
Not that I'm aware of at this point in time.
Thank you.
Ed Barber, Newport Daily Express. Ed, Newport Daily Express. All right, we're going to move to Joel, Burlington Free Press.
Hello, Governor, this is Joel. I'm wondering how the administration is progressing towards reopening, say, retail and restaurants with outside amenities or setups. I understand that that's a possibility in the coming months and might be considered a safer alternative to inside groups. Is that a guideline that you intend to release next week, or is it a longer timeline than that?
Well, again, we're contemplating all different types of measures based on the trajectory, the trends, the data, the science that we're seeing, so that we don't open up too quick, and wanting to understand the ripple effects of that as well, so we don't put people at risk or at harm, and certainly different municipalities who may not want us to do this. So we want to be cognizant of that as well. But again, we want to open up the restaurants eventually. I would say those with outdoor seating would be probably, from a common sense standpoint, the first to be able to do that, because we know being outside is better than being in a confined space. So I don't know when that's going to happen. It certainly is something that we're considering. And again, every day we pay attention to that data. I pay attention to it, and but we want to make sure that we do it in the right way.
Okay, thank you, Governor.
Elizabeth Hewitt, BT Digger. Liz Hewitt, BT Digger. All right, we'll move to Greg at the County Courier.
Hi, Governor. Sorry if this question had been asked in the last few minutes. I got disconnected, but you guys have already been talking dates up to June 1st, but the executive order expires in a week. How long do you expect to extend that executive order for?
Greg, that question has not been asked yet, so you're the first, at least today. Obviously, I've said previous that we'll be extending that order. The state of emergency will be extended, not to be confused with the stay home, stay safe order. That has been amended along the way, so we'll be cleaning that up when we release the new guidance and the new state of emergency. That'll be done on or before Friday. What it includes is yet to be determined. I mean, we're obviously working on that and the time period, so I don't want to get ahead of that. But again, I just want to be very clear and transparent. the state of emergency is going to continue. It's the vehicle we need to be able to open different sectors and make changes along the way based on what we're seeing. Again, we're working as a region. We're seeing what's happening. I still monitor what's happening in Massachusetts and New York and New Hampshire, and that has an effect, a direct effect on us here in Vermont. So when we watch the data on both here in the state and around the region, that'll determine what we need to do in the future. And again, if we have this state of emergency in order, if we have to push pause on something, if something goes drastically wrong, that we'll be able to work quickly to make sure that we're protecting Vermonters.
Okay, and a quick follow-up. So are you expecting to extend the executive order for the stay-at-home order, stay safe order?
Yeah, I would say, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I would say that's been amended a lot along the way, so we'll clean that up to reflect what we're doing today. So I think you would expect that that would be relaxed in some capacity. To the degree is yet to be determined, but it won't be the same stay home, stay safe order that was presented initially. That'll be something totally different.
So obviously these orders don't come overnight. How long in advance does your administration look ahead at when they're going to issue orders, what the orders are going to be? And do they look for a time period? Do they look for some sort of data to trigger an opening or a closing?
Yeah, again, what we're seeing, we're watching the trajectory. What you saw from Commissioner Pichek is something that we adhere to. What I hear from Dr. Levine on a daily basis is what guides me. What I'm watching throughout the country, I'm paying attention to. So what another state might be experimenting in some way, doing something different than maybe others have done, but it may be working or not. So we learn from other states. I talk constantly with other governors throughout the country with all different types of approaches and try to learn from them what would be best for Vermont and not taking any unnecessary risks to put us in a situation that we don't want to be in, because we've done such a great job. Vermonters have done so well with this over the last 2 months. And now that we're getting closer to this end of this long tunnel, it would be unfortunate if we did something that would deter from that. So again, everything that you've heard today and in previous press conferences is something that we adhere to. So it's all science and data driven and based on what we're seeing on the ground and what we're seeing across the country and in our region.
Thank you, Governor. And just on a quick side note, I just wanted to mention, I don't know if you saw VPR's report yesterday about your press conferences and how it's gained or provided more access to other media that wouldn't normally be involved. But I did just want to mention we all appreciate that.
Yeah, I have not seen that, Greg, but it's a great point. I think I mentioned it the other day. The silver lining in a lot of this is that we are now hearing from the county couriers of the world and from Chester and Bennington and Brattleboro and so forth. And all these entities are able to ask us questions. We're able to take somewhat the temperature of what's happening around the region, what's on the minds of people throughout the state in ways that we hadn't before. It's during our press conferences over my last 3 years, it's about those who are here in this area that come to the press conferences, and they're the ones that get to ask the questions. So again, the silver lining has been getting a broader perspective of what's happening, and I think it's been very, very vital to what we're doing, and I hope we'll be able to continue this after this pandemic leaves, but this has taught us something.
Thank you, Governor.
All right, we're going to go back to Elizabeth Hewitt, BT Digger. Maybe. Liz? Okay, we're going to go over to another one of her colleagues, John Walters at BT Digger.
This is a question about the backlog in processing initial unemployment claims, but I'm specifically asking the governor. I've already talked to Commissioner Harrington about this, and I wanted to get the administration perspective specifically. Starting in mid-March, when you were, ordering the closure of different sectors of the economy, initial unemployment claims went through the roof and stayed that way, obviously. But it took a few weeks before there was a move, like it was April 10th when the administration put out a request for contract bids for an outside contractor. And I'm wondering why it took a few weeks to make that move.
Yeah, if I was, I'll sit in my Monday morning quarterback position. If I knew now what I should have known then, maybe we would have done it differently. We would have done it sooner. If I'd known that was going to happen back in January, I might have made some arrangements for a contract to go out so that we could build up our workforce in anticipation of the pandemic coming. But I don't have a crystal ball, and it's one of the misgivings I've had. I've owned up to it. If we could have reacted quicker, if we could have put more people out, we would have. But again, we were right in the middle of a crisis. You're doing the best you can. Everyone is trying as hard as they can, and this simply overwhelmed us. We went from 2.1% filing, claims well under 5,000 at that point a week, and we went from that to 90,000. We're not the only state, and I imagine, John, you've done your research, but I still have a daughter in Rhode Island who, after 6 weeks, still can't get through, has not received any unemployment benefits. So this is not unique to Vermont. This is a national problem. We have a 50-year-old mechanism, a computer system that has been debated over the last 10 years plus, and no action has been taken. So I think if we're going to place blame, I'll take the brunt of it, but I think we all have a part in this, and we'll learn from it. So we're going to have to do things differently in the future in anticipation of this. But we did the best we could. Obviously, it wasn't good enough, and I take full responsibility.
Thank you, Governor.
Guy Page? Guy? All right, I think we're through.
With that, I thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you on Monday. For those kids that might be watching out there, remember, Mother's Day is on Sunday. It's their day, not your day. Treat them even more special than you would every other day. 364 days a year are your day. This is one for the moms, so treat them extra special. Thanks.